Let's call it to order.
We ready?
We are ready.
All right. I would like to call the Special Public Safety Summit to order and have Councilmember John Camara lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Camara.
Thank you, Mr. President. Take off your hat, please. Put your hand over your heart. If you feel inclined to salute the flag and your previous military, please do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, you guys, since this is a special meeting and not an official council meeting, we're just going to dive right into the issues at hand. We'll do a couple public comments, and then I'm going to bring up Don Schultz, who was the president of this council, has been in Van Nuys for a very long time, volunteers with the LAPD, and can brief us and open it up for what's going on here in the Mid-Valley. But before we bring up Mr. Schultz, let's start off with Carolina Goodman from the League of Women Voters. Carolina. Yeah, that's fine. That's perfect.
Please speak in the microphone, too.
So the League of Women Voters started last summer doing research in this area, and we partnered with Lieutenant Dawson at LAPD and did a symposium last December. In February, we held a panel where we had Stephanie Powell was on our panel at CSUN last February, and in May, we did one in Koreatown. So we are doing our best to inform the public. We're planning another one in August. So I will share that information. That one will be in South LA. I'm also here representing the National Council of Jewish Women, who are working with volunteers to support a law that was passed, 1193, that says bars and emergency hospitals and certain other businesses like transit stations must have a poster visible that in 3 different languages with a helpline, and this is what the poster looks like now. And I hope you see this in bars and in hospital rooms. The volunteers are going out to double check that they're doing it. And I'll have to say that half the posters, half the bars that I've been in actually have them up. The other half don't, and so we're making a second visit. There is
So it's a requirement that they have to post it?
It's a law. It's a stiff fine, and I can send you the law so that you would all be informed about it. But what NCJW does is anytime you can get 10 people together, they will come out and train you. They'll do a human trafficking 101, which is information about human trafficking. They will also do another training if you would like to have volunteers that will go out and make sure these posters are up. I mean, there is a protocol. You have to make sure that you go during the daytime, you go with a partner, things like that. So, and then the last thing I want to say is I have some material about a group of men that are standing up against human trafficking. That is a group out of CARE 18, and I think somebody from the council has been in touch with CARE 18. Also, if you are interested in anything that has to do with faith-based initiatives, CARE 18 also is working with ministers and priests and rabbis to work with their congregations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodman. Thank you very much. Ron Hay. How are you, Mr. Hay?
I am well, thank you. I am the block captain of Leadwell Street, and we have noticed a real uptick in condoms in the street in front of our homes. Not only do the girls hang out at the corner of Valerio and Sepulveda, but they are now infiltrating into the neighborhood, and we see this on Firmament too, especially late at night, along with all the dumping that comes with it. And it's a little disturbing. I see them every hour of the day, and I've gone out to Costco early in the morning to get gas, and I see them standing on the corner waving at me, and I just usually say, not in my lifetime, And that's it, but it's really quite disturbing how it's really increased of late. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hay. Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else for public comment? All right, so then let's rock and roll and bring up Council President Emeritus, Mr. Don Schultz. Don has been volunteering for the LAPD since
Late
the
1980s.
Nixon administration, and also is the founder of GASP, Groups Against Street Prostitution. So Don, could you give us a little briefing on this issue and how it's affected Van Nuys in the Valley for some time now?
Sure, I can, George.
And Don, if you want to do a handhold on that microphone.
Okay,
feel
that might
free.
be easier.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
pull it directly out. There we go.
There we go. Can everyone hear me? Good. First of all, thank you, George, and thank you, Van Nuys Neighborhood Council, for putting this on. I know we have one of the more important people in this room, Vice Sergeant in Van Nuys, LAPD, Ron Fisher. But in all good discretion, I don't think I want to identify him visibly. He may not want to be. He'll be up here shortly. We can thank him for all the good things that are done in attacking this problem in our streets in Van Nuys. Wherever you are, Ron. Not that Ron. Okay, as most of us are familiar with the sometimes described term, quote, Sepulveda Boulevard prostitution corridor in the San Fernando Valley, the boulevard in particular, that stretch of Sepulveda from Ventura Boulevard to the south, going north to Devonshire Street at the other end, has been known to be riddled with crime activity which includes drug dealing, street prostitution, and gang activity for over 3 decades. This isn't something that just cropped up for any of our neighborhoods. While LAPD vice units have done a tremendous job with arrests of pimps, street prostitutes, and Johns, and I doubt if there's anyone in the room that doesn't know the meaning of what Johns are. I'd be ashamed to put my hand up too. Over the years, over 150 arrests the first quarter of this year was done by Van Nuys Division of LAPD Vice, and we can thank Ron for that. LAPD cannot arrest their way out of this disgusting enigma anymore. Used condoms continue to appear in residential streets, as you just heard from one resident. Sidewalks and business parking lots along and adjacent to Sepulveda Boulevard are also impacted. Simply put, LAPD needs more tools rather than just moving the problem from one area of Sepulveda Boulevard to another. And I'll try to bring this a little bit to a closure because I don't know if you're taking any questions at this point or not, George. That's up to you. Okay. Chief Beck has indicated that he is not in favor of the impounding of convicted John's cars. That's disappointing to me personally and to our organization, because that's one of the things that we think is most imperative, that the John's cars, once they're convicted, once they're arrested, the cars get impounded. It's a costly fee for those Johns to get the cars back out, plus the explanation they have to give back home why they don't have their car if they don't have the money to get it out. It's one way of dealing with the issue. Okay, local lawmakers are pondering how to change existing laws. Our organization has come up with 2 recommendations, and we think they're pretty basic. One is the reinstitution of the impounding of John's cars. The other is creating a 6 crimes court that deals only with convicted Johns. Now, there are courts all over the nation right now that deal with sex crimes. It's not a popular type court, but it deals with pimps, it deals with prostitutes, and it deals with Johns. We think, our organization feels, that if the focus is put on the Johns, the demand dries up. Consequently, the street prostitution issue will no longer be a local issue. As long as the Johns are coming into our neighborhoods, the prostitutes will be there for them. This is getting very high-tech in the internet age and with smartphones. It's rare you see a street prostitute on our streets along Sepulveda without a smartphone or any phone at all. So let me just close this by saying, again, thank you very much, George and Council, for putting this together. It's long overdue. We need to move ahead. And let me finish with, if we continue to do what we've been doing, why would we expect different results? Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. All right, I would like to call up Dr. Stephanie Powell. She is very familiar with this issue and has been working on this for decades now. Dr. Powell, the floor is yours. We could do that if you want.
Nobody knows who he is.
He's undercover right now.
It's a cute guy in the ponytail. For those of you that don't know me, and I think I know mostly everyone in the room, I am the executive director for the Mary Magdalene Project, and we are headquartered in Van Nuys. However, we service the Los Angeles area. Prior to me becoming the executive director, I partnered with Ron Fisher, as a matter of fact. I had the mission side, so I was the sergeant in charge of Mission Vice. We stopped at Van Nuys. And so when Ron couldn't handle his problem, we would go into Van Nuys and help him out. Just kidding. Ron does an excellent job from Van Nuys. I have to tell you this, because not only does he have to handle the prostitution issue, but the ABC issues as well, and he does an excellent job. I can testify to that because I've worked alongside him. I'm a 30-year veteran of the Los Angeles Police Department. At the Mary Magdalene Project, and so, sir, I totally understand the frustration when you have to deal with things like condoms in the street. I totally get that. One of the things that I understood as a vice sergeant, that it wasn't an issue that just could be arrested away. That a lot of times we'd run into these women and girls, and what they really needed were direct services. So as a result of that, the Mary Magdalene Project, I actually used them as a resource when I was a vice sergeant, and Ron did as well. So when I retired, I decided I was going to volunteer and lick a couple of envelopes and answer some phones, and they said they had an executive director spot open, so I took it. I didn't have anything else to do. I was retired. So what I have really noticed, and now that have been on both sides, what I have seen is that, it's not an issue where you could just, because you'll arrest them and the issue will move into Mission Division, then Mission Division will start arresting them and they'll come over into Van Nuys. And then if South Central is doing a lot of arrests, then they'll move into the Valley, so it starts to be moved around. What's really important is direct services. If it's one thing, a lot of these women, you'll talk to them, they don't want to be in the life, but they don't have anything else to turn to. So that's where the Mary Magdalene Project comes in. It helps them with their journey out of this life of abuse and being out there. So some of the services that we offer is that if they don't have a GED, we'll help them get their GEDs. All of our services are absolutely free to them. We also have a prostitution diversion program where we partner with the city attorney's office. When the women are arrested, they have a choice. They can come through our program where they will do 8 to 18 sessions. They're 1-hour sessions. They are survivor-led. Some of those sessions include things like loss of identity, addiction to fast money, those type of things. We do an intake of the women to see what their needs are, and we try and help them with those needs. Finding jobs, life skills, and we've been really successful. For a lot of them, it's just really hard to get out of that life, especially if they've been entrenched. Because if the average entry age is 12 to 13 years old, and now that woman is 23, that's a long time. With a large arrest record, it's really hard for them to get jobs. So we help them in that capacity. We also have a drop-in center. And with the drop-in center, the women and girls are able to come into our drop-in center. It ends up being kind of a safety net for them, because they can take a rest from being out there, or they can take a rest from being with their traffickers. With that, there's food, there's hygiene products that we're able to give them. And so someone might say, well, why is food important? Food food is important because as you see them going up and down the street, the pimps will not allow them to eat until they've met their quota, which is usually anything between $500 to $1,000. And so that's why they're so relentless and flagging you down, because if they don't make that amount of money, serious things happen to them as a result. We just partnered with the district attorney's office in their first step program, in which we provide intervention to girls, young girls that have pimps, and usually these girls are in foster and group homes. And so with that, we try and break that bond between the victim and the trafficker. We also do community education as well. So we do a whole lot of stuff. The bottom line is, it's not just an issue, and the other important thing is and our nonprofit has done this, for the nonprofits to partner with law enforcement. Because if Ron gets a case and he's trying to make sure that that pimp goes to jail, he needs to make sure that his victim has the services that she's going to need, because he needs her to testify in court. And so that's one of the other things that we do. We work very closely with law enforcement in order to make sure that when these pimps are arrested, that they actually go to jail. So that's what we do at the Mary Magdalene Project.
So what could be changed? Like, what thing could be just kind of tweaked a little bit to tackle this problem? Is it what Mr. Schultz said with the impounding of the cars? I mean, the position of the Department of LAPD was that the car is not part of the crime,
right,
when the crime is taking place in the car.
You know, there's a couple of things. Okay, so I'm trying to see what hat I have on. I'm retired, so I can say this. When I was a vice sergeant, I would have loved to have been able to impound their cars. I would have loved for there to be more things happening to the Johns, because usually when those Johns go to jail, by the time these officers are at end of watch, they're back home. A lot of these Johns are family men, and so it's real easy to really go after them, because they have serious consequences if their car is gone. Or there's some cities where they actually will put their faces on billboards. There's some cities where they will put them on Facebook. So they make it, or they'll put their names in the paper. So they make it very public. These guys don't want their names in the paper because, and I know Ron can attest to this, I know when I was at Mission, I kid you not, I have arrested everyone from a surgeon that was going down Sepulveda Boulevard, that in his scrubs on his way to work, to police officers, firemen, as well as the gardener. So it runs a huge gamut. If these men started really getting embarrassed and brought into the light, then I think that would be extremely helpful if that could possibly happen. The other thing I think that is real important, and I know Ron and I have had this conversation before, is when you're talking about the pimps, to actually get filings on them. So there needs to be some different ways of doing that. Because the problem is that if Ron gets a girl and she wants to testify against her pimp, and she's told Ron everything that first night, if he is unable to pick her up and get her again in order for her to go to court, because remember, she's frightened to go to court because the pimp, what they'll do, this is what the pimps will do, and the girls have attested to this. So let's say she's going to roll over on her pimp. There's a Facebook page that looks like a wanted poster, and so she gets a green light if you see her out on the street because she's a snitch. So there's a lot of, and not to mention the emotional bond that has now happened between her and the pimp, where she's in love with this guy, and so therefore she does not want to testify. So there's a million reasons why. But I say this, when I worked child abuse, we were still having the same problem. If a girl was molested by her father and now she has to sit in court and she has to testify against him, those children wouldn't testify. But now they have it where they will interview her. Everybody interviews her at the same time, and she's videotaped. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why we couldn't possibly do the same thing with. So it's just.
You don't do that now?
No, she's got to show up, and I'll talk from personal experience. I've had it where I've presented a case to the DA's office, and I'll have one girl who wants to roll over, and they'll say, well, we'll file the case. Can you get the other 2 girls to testify? I barely got this one in here. So needless to say, I've probably been thrown out of the district attorney's office a couple of times because I haven't got my cases filed. But that they're starting to change as well as law enforcement and really starting to see this thing as a more victim-centered. So I say all that to say this: it's not just a problem in terms of your problem's not going to go away by just arresting the women. There has to be harsher things happening to the Johns as well, supply and demand. If they're not out there buying it, the girls aren't going to be out there visible. Now, it may drive it into the internet, but it's driven it off of your street.
Sure. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. Do you have, Mr. Fisher, you want to come up and brief us on what's going on out there? And then we'll bring up the big wigs from from the feds. The feds.
Hi, Don.
This is not Ron Fisher.
Most of the folks here in attendance
Ron, just pull it out of it.
know who I am.
Straight up. There you go.
Know who I am. So yes, I'm Sergeant Ron Fisher. I'm the Vice OIC here at Van Nuys. I've got a little over 26 years now with the department, and the last 4 have been as the Vice OIC. Recently, as of a week ago Monday, I had the opportunity to take myself and one of my vice investigators to New Hampshire at the request of the president of their state's Chief of Police Association to provide training to the chiefs of police on the subject of human trafficking. And it's readily apparent that there's the same stuff we're seeing here, they're seeing back there. Unfortunately for them, they're in a world of hurt with relationship to enforcement and getting the victims resources. The state has none, okay, at all. They don't have a Mary Magdalene. They don't have the Children of the Night. They don't have the Dream Center, these things that are in place. But, you know, I consider us at the beginning stages of this issue, and they have got a lot to catch up with. So with that being said, and my now retired friend has pointed out, one of the most difficult things with the human trafficking component is having a victim to get to court to testify. Without that victim, we don't have a case. So as part of that, and to just touch on the videotaping, when we do have a victim that we're interviewed, my investigators always videotape and audio record, and that really helps the filing process. One of the, you asked, you know, what could be done?
Yeah, what
thing can we
to make it?
Well, there isn't any one thing that doesn't exist. It's a multitude of things. However, personally, from my personal observation out here and being down in the weeds on this, I think that we need to see one of the first things that has to change is a paradigm shift in thinking, both from law enforcement and the community. In law enforcement, I solve problems with these things right here, okay? That's what I do. We do it really well. Unfortunately, it's not working, okay? So making that paradigm shift in law enforcement's mindset is challenging when that's what you've relied on for the past couple years. And the victim-centered approach, okay? The complexity of this issue is enormous. The psychological components, just with everything that you're dealing with. That's really challenging for me to sit across and have a discussion with a girl to try to get her to work with me, cooperate with me in order to make this change, okay? Human trafficking victims are a very unique victim in the sense of the word victim. They're not like other victims that we in law enforcement encounter where they actually want us to be there. They want us to help them get their property back or save their life or whatever it is that's happened to them. These young ladies typically do not self-identify as a victim, okay? They don't see themselves as victims. So that there's a challenge right there. The most important question, first question that we can ask a girl who we're trying to work with is, at what age and what were the circumstances that you first interacted with law enforcement? Not when they were arrested, just at what age and what were the circumstances? At this training that I just put on, we conducted a video conference with 7 victims who were over here at Children of the Night. And the chiefs had an opportunity to ask the girls questions. That was one of the questions that I presented to the girls. And if you were to hear each of their stories, it was horrible. It just the worst case scenario. I'll give you an example of one. She said that it was her first day in kindergarten. Her father had brought her to school, and he was there doing whatever they do. And the police came in front of everybody and arrested her dad and took him to jail. Okay, so when you've asked the follow-up question, how did that make you feel? Well, what do you think the answer is on that? Okay, so how that's going to impact how I'm able to, I got to overcome that. And that's what Stephanie was kind of touching on there is the challenges presented to us in law enforcement in getting that victim to cooperate. It's really hard, okay? So there's that paradigm shift that I talked about in the thinking of law enforcement. The other paradigm shift that needs to occur is in society's view of the subject matter of human trafficking and also the victims associated with it. We need to bring the human factor back into the issue, okay? Typically, you going up and down Sepulveda Boulevard, you see, or community members will see a girl standing on the corner and immediately know what they're doing. It's not hard. They're waving at you, okay, wearing next to nothing, doing what they do. Typically, and I'm not using this verbiage to be salacious or anything, but I'm just saying typically, first thing that pops in their head, because it's been told to me, look, there's a whore on the corner, okay? We've just dehumanized that person standing on that corner. And we need to bring that human factor back into this and say, look, that's a human being there. It's a victim. At some point she was, she's somebody's daughter. She was somebody's baby, okay? So we need to get that. That's part of that. When I say a paradigm shift, that's part of it.